Let's get it.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Brothers Y'all Good. My name is Mike. I'm here with my co-host Jason, and we've got an amazing guest with us, Drew Phillips, who's going to talk a little bit about his life, his experiences, his challenges, and what's going on. But first, I got to turn it to you, Jason. Brother, you good?
Man, I'm good. It's been a long day. I started taking ADD medications, and my days is like 3 times as long now. I'm actually able to focus, so I'm a little mentally tired, but I'm grateful for these. These are real good first world problems. How about you, brother? You good?
I'm good, man. You and I talked this weekend, Saturday night. Had a situation that happened with a friend of mine reaching out to me saying, hey, we got a mutual friend that's in crisis right now, and he's in need of what you guys have created. And I knew exactly what he meant. So I reached out to that friend. I reached out to you Saturday night, said, hey, I'm getting my car. I'm going to meet up, at San Diego. So it's, of course, somebody that you knew as well. We talked about how we should deal with that. I reached out to the folks that have been on the show, right? Reached out to your sister. I reached out to Ojere. I reached out to Nate. I reached out to my son, who's also a therapist, just to get advice on how to deal with somebody that was legit in crisis. And talked to you until I got to the brother's house, listened to their advice, sat with him for a couple hours, had a friend that met up with me. We took him out to dinner to give him some food and some conversation and get him settled a bit so he could get focused on how to deal with the pain that he was going through. And it's just an amazing part of what this experience has been since we started this podcast last month. It just seems to be that there's one example right after the next of somebody that we know that's in crisis, that needs somebody to listen to. And he was appreciative that there were people there for him. And I appreciate the fact that we had started to build this network, right? So when I talked to Liz, she was able to go, I'm not in town, but let me do this. When I talked to Nate, he's traveling and he said, hey, let's do this. I talked to Ojere and he's like, here's what you should do. I talked to my son and he's like, hey, he's not my client, so I'm not going to tell you what he should do, but let me tell you what you should do. And then bless my son. And he reached out to me yesterday just to make sure I'm good, right? After what I had told him about what's going on. So that's really, I couldn't be more pleased with what we're creating here because it's that space to have those conversations. Yeah. And so it's a continuation of that. And so despite the fact that I was exhausted, I saw you Sunday morning in church. I'm good. I'm real good because I know we're doing what we're doing. And I'm good because we got this brother coming on the show and he's going to talk about our fancy little show that he finally got to be a guest on. And I'm going to let you take it over from there, Jason. But before you introduce him, remind those who might be listening for the first time, what's this fancy little show all about?
Sure. Well, Brothers Y'all Good is more than just a podcast. This is a real talk space where Black men can come through, open up, and get honest about mental health. This show dives deep into the stuff that matters. We're talking about faith, fatherhood, fellowship, and all the ups and downs of navigating life as a Black man today. From dealing with stress, anxiety, trauma, to breaking through the stigma that's been holding us back. Our show aims to keep it real. We're going to use personal stories, expert advice, and practical tools to help you find peace and strength. That ain't just talk, and this ain't just talk. It's about building each other up, sharing experiences, and creating a healthier, stronger community. So, as we always say, pull up, tune in, and let's have the conversations that heal. Together, we're breaking the silence, overcoming barriers, and helping every brother to be able to say, yeah, brother, I'm good. And so we're super glad that everybody's here. It's an honor for me to have somebody who I've known for a long time. Anybody that knows me knows this guy. Most people in San Diego know this guy. He is literally, he might be the craziest person I know. And that's saying a lot because I know a lot of people. But one thing I love about this brother right here is in the midst of all of the antics, there's a real man that's really passionate about some incredible things. And so I just want to say what's up to my big little brother, the one and only Drewski. What's up, brother Drew? You good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. Thanks for having me
Yeah.
on your little fancy little show. I love it. I
Well,
love it. I love it.
yeah.
Thank you, man. That was a solid intro, and I appreciate that. I appreciate both of y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to some, productive and constructive dialogue, which is one thing that I can say over the 25 plus years that me and you have been friends that we've always had between us. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and I'm looking forward to that also too, to, the fancy judge over here. I'm just excited to learn from somebody who's just, great at what they do, because we can always learn from each other. So I'm excited to be a part of tonight's dialogue, and hopefully, we can all walk away from this better.
Man, that is certainly the hope.
Yeah.
Why don't you start us off with just a little bit about who are you? Who's Drew Phillips?
Well, so in a nutshell, I came to California in '95. I was in the Navy. Did my time right here in Point Loma. When I got out, I immediately went right to college. And that's when me and you became friends, Jason. During that transition, that critical moment in my life, people don't know this, but Jason was one of the top barbers in all of San Diego, and I needed a place to get my hair cut. So it happened to be no more than a mile from where I live. And I discovered that place. And, after getting a few haircuts, he took me in like family. And the rest has been history. Navy, then college. And then I came back out here to pursue a professional football career. And what makes Jason so special is because when I made the transition back to Illinois to finish my college degree, Jason rode with me. He was the only person that offered to go with me on that long road trip, right? And we had some, we experienced a little bit of, ups and downs, and he helped me get through it. I don't even know how it would have gone were it not for him. And then when I came back out here to pursue professional football, I stayed on his couch until I got everything together, which, again, having friends like that, it takes a lot of stress off of you, man. And so, before we talk about anything, Jason, I just want to let you know I love you, man. Just, brother to brother, and, the fancy judge here, too. You all right, I guess. But,
Yeah, man. Well, I love you, too, man. For real, for real.
And, but no, after, my football career and all that, got into business and enterprise, and now I own a construction company, and, we do repairs, we build stuff, and we just help people out. And one thing that I like to do is, everything that I do, all of my progress in life has I've made through networking, and I learned that skill from you, Jason. So, and I'm able to, basically be in a position now to be an asset to the people who need me, while I also use my network to essentially promote and further my business.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
And that's who I am in a nutshell. I'm a guy who tries to help out and be useful where I might be useful at. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely glad that you're here. Thanks for the kind words. If you could maybe just let's open up with what is when you hear the words mental health,
Yeah.
What resonates with you about that? What do you think about when you hear those words?
Well, my lived experience and life has taught me that mental health is at the very core of everything we do, right? It all, everything we do can basically stem from mental health, our ability to reason, our ability to, make judgment calls, the way we interpret information, how we move through society, how we are able to interact with people around us, all that, uh, how we, process information, all that stuff, all that is mental health is directly connected to every facet of our life. And that's why it's so important that we, stay on top of that and we address that, because it's something that for so long has gone unaddressed, in our community, that we now, essentially feels like we're playing catch up, because before mental health was kind of like a taboo thing. They just assumed you was good, but no one ever really dug deep past the surface. And, a lot of people move around with, unaddressed, trauma and issues from their past and from whatever reason. And, I think mental health is just a slice, a portion of our overall health. But I think that is what affects us the most, if you ask me.
Yeah. What, if you did an assessment of your mental health right now and just where you are, where would you put yourself? And then the second part of that question is, how did you get to this place, wherever you find yourself? How are you mentally and how did you get there?
Well, I mean, I would consider myself healthy, mentally healthy, and how I got here is because um, I'm able to make sense of what I do, what happens to me, how I interact in the world. And essentially, one gauge of that is how successful I can, use the tools at my disposal so I can basically be successful in what I do as far as, making a living and all that. And also too, the nature of my relationships, where they're all, just, for the most part, they're all, good, solid, positive relationships with everybody who I'm connected to.
Right. Let me follow up with that, Drew. So if your mental health is good now, but can you think back to a time when you wouldn't have been able to say, yeah, my mental health is really good. My relationships are really good. Because I think that's part of what our audience wants to kind of hear about, some of those challenges, those times when things weren't going so well, and how you got from that space to where you are today. Because I don't want everybody to think that everybody that we have on the show was just amazingly well rounded, got great mental health, and never had any struggles, because I don't think that's real. So can you
Sure.
share a time when it wasn't quite as good as it is now?
Oh, well, quite honestly, I've been a part of relationships in the past with, certain girlfriends that, my relationships just weren't the best that I liked. And obviously, that had a toll on me emotionally, right? And that just kind of puts you in a place that's less than ideal. And, to compare where you are now to where you were then, you can, and then you can, I can say that, oh, well, I was with a relationship that, that I was struggling to make work and all that other stuff. And it just didn't work out. And that took a toll on me mentally. But the nature of my relationship with my significant other definitely had a an impact on my overall mental health, for
How
sure.
so? How so?
Um, because it's like, you sometimes when you're in relationships that,
You keep
require,
saying you keep saying you. We
when I
have
was in a relationship,
I statements is
when
good.
I was in a relationship that struggled, you know, it stresses me out. And because it stresses me out, it puts a strain on everything else
Mm,
that I'm doing.
mm,
Right. That's why it's so important for me to have somebody in my life that does, that does kind of, coincide and work well with me. That's why I learned the hard way that compatibility is the most important thing I got to look for, in a woman that I pursue a relationship with.
Well, so when you, and this might seem obvious to some people, I don't know, but I think it's worth looking at. Like, so when you're in a scenario like that, and you, you kind of realize, man, this is just not working. Something's not working or whatever. Like, at what point did you get to, like, I just need to, like, leave from a relationship? And during that process, have you ever thought that maybe it was the other person, but you realized that it was you?
Yes. So when I was in my first real relationship, now this was probably 15 years ago, right? So I was much younger. And when I realized that, conflicts, you know, perspectives clashing together, we just couldn't see eye to eye on things. And that required us to move forward in our relationship. And it just, we just weren't, agreeing on things. And then I made a decision, said, well, if we can't agree, then, we got to end this. And then I pretty much ended it just like that, with no kind of room for reconciliation or nothing. I just abruptly ended it in the worst manner possible, which, life has taught me that, obviously, you should be better toward people that you care about. But, I just got to a point out of frustration. I was like, you know what, it's over. I'm done with all this. And just ended it super abruptly. And then, but the way I reasoned with it, I made my decision because of something she wasn't doing. And then ultimately, I decided that, it was essentially on me, because I knew what I was getting into from the beginning, and I still decided to pursue a relationship, and I still chose to try to force a relationship with someone that I just didn't have enough in common with. So, and that's what accountability looks like, when you can look at something and accept your part in it, and I can take the blame for myself. Like, you know what, that was on me. And at the end of the day, the way in which we approach things tells me where I'm at in life, right? How I handle things, how I handle adversity, how I handle friction is an indication of where I'm at in life. Life has taught me that too. So, when I was younger, much more impulsive, way more emotional, all that other stuff. A lot, easier for me to do and say irrational things. I learned that about myself as well through all that. And so, oh yeah.
So did you have somebody or something that helped you through that transition, through that learning process? Or do you think that was just you, part of growing up, and as you got older, you certainly got wiser about how life works, how relationships work, and how you work?
Well, so the answer is yes and yes. So, thankfully, I had somebody like Jason in my corner who I could talk to when I was struggling with things, because essentially some of his advice kind of helped me, reason with myself. And then more importantly, as I've gotten older and, I'd like to think a little bit wiser, I'm able now to process things, and now I know what to look for. And now I know, what it means to respect red flags, right? And essentially now I know how to basically, avoid things that I know won't work out because of my experience of having gone through tough things before, right? Like, again, and I think that was just part of my evolutionary process that helped, get me to where I am today.
Let's go back a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
talk about how you grew up, and like how that shapes your worldview
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, let's and then like maybe how did you? Yeah, and then like what's your childhood and stuff? How that maybe influenced the way you saw relationships and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I had both parents in my house, right? Both my mom and my dad were married to each other, right? And my dad was a deacon, so we was big on church. We went to church every Sunday, and if we didn't, we had a real reason why we didn't. Period. And then my dad, think of like James Evans from Good Times, right? He was kind of that kind of typecast mixed with the dad from Friday, right? Freddie's dad from Friday. 50-50, right? And so my dad was but my dad was very authoritarian, very kind of matter of fact, do it because I said so type person, and don't talk back to me. And then, and then my mom, on the other hand, was kind of like, because I come from a big family, whole bunch of kids, right? So my mom was the kind of person where, she was the kind of person that would say, well, if I got to tell you again, I'm going to tell your dad. And then we didn't want to hear it from our dad. So, and then my dad was, my folks were very, very strict, especially when we were really young. And then my dad was all about accountability. He did not give you, or he gave very little grace when it comes to making excuses for mistakes that you made, or me doing and being and doing things that I had no business doing. He always held me accountable for that, and all my siblings too. And so, a lot of our relatives looked at us like, we were some kind of soldiers in some kind of army or something. Because my dad, and I mean, it was yes sir, no sir, all that in our household. Very, very kind of rigid, strict environment that I grew up in. Yeah.
I fortunately, I got a chance to meet your father
Yeah.
and your mom.
Yes.
I met your siblings.
Yes.
Drew used to tell me stories, just these wild stories. And it's just no way this is true. I mean, there's no way that this guy is telling the truth. Like nobody lives like this.
Right.
Like nobody has this type of like shenanigans going on in their life. Right. And I was so wrong. I went back with Drew and we drove across country, and we got to his, man, this is my first experience with his dad. We go in the house, it's probably 3 a.m, something like this. I don't know. We got it really late. We in Chicago. We got it really late, and we go in the house. All of a sudden his family kind of comes down. I think his 2 sisters, his mom and dad was there. I don't know if Simon was there yet, but
he was there.
Yeah. Pops comes down, he walks around me, he's like looking at me like I'm foreign, and he just says, "What is you?" And I was like, "What?" You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Oh man."
Hey, they had never seen nobody like Jason before.
Man, I was like, "Oh my!" And then all of a sudden, it's 3 a.m. He's like, "I want you to fall back, and I want you to fall back, and I'm gonna catch you." I'm thinking, man,
hey, we was doing. Hey, my dad was doing trust falls at 4 a.m.
I'm like, we are not.
Yes.
But what I did realize though, right? I mean, I heard, I heard the good and the bad, right? As fun as families can be and whatever. There's a side to some of that stuff that manifests in other ways, right? It manifests and not. So my question to you would be: Did you have to overcome any of that adversity in your life? Chaz is burnt out. Chaz and Dante Pride, man. He said we can't have this guy. And Chad says somebody left Don Lemon in the air fryer way too long. He's trying to derail the show, man. Don't pay attention to him, Drew. Stay focused. Chaz is out of control. But no, like, and then so you grew up in Chicago, father like military, all this kind of stuff. And then where did you find yourself after that? How did you end up in San Diego? Talk about like some of your time in the Navy.
Well, I joined the Navy, right? So, the Navy, I wanted to go to college, and, obviously I didn't come from money. So the most viable option for me at the time that made the most sense was joining the military, simply because they promised to pay for college. And, my dad, who grew up in a different America than I did, was super skeptical about me joining the military. And so, he essentially, when he saw that I was convinced, that I was going to go, he just told me one thing: Drew, whatever they give you, whatever they promise you, make sure you get it in writing. That's it. Just make sure you get it in writing that they're going to do X, Y, and Z. If you're going to put your life on the line, make sure whatever they promise you, you get it in writing. And I said, okay. And, I was still 17, signed up in the Navy's delayed entry program, graduated high school. 3 weeks later, I'm in boot camp. And the rest was history. Mm. And honestly, that was the smartest thing I ever could have done. To me, there's nothing more productive for your first 4 years out of high school than joining the military. There's nothing more productive than that. Only because it's a lifetime of benefit after that.
But talk about that, being 17 in the military, away from family, away from home, away from a dad that was real strict. Was it a sense that you were going from some structure at home to different structure in the Navy? Or was it really, did you have the focus that I know at 17, the Navy's going to give me a lifetime full of benefits potentially if I just have my mental straight to get through these 4 years of service?
That's a great question. So it was, coming from a strict household, believe it or not, joining the Navy was a sense of freedom for me, because essentially the Navy required that wherever you're supposed to be, you got to be there on time. That's it. You can't be late, so you might as well be early. Right. But that's really it. I mean, the lifestyle that I lived as a young man, it was, relatively uneventful. So going to the military was an easy transition for me. I never ran the streets. I didn't do anything, I didn't, damage my body. I wasn't into any kind of poisons or any partying or none of that. So joining the military was actually easy for me. Mm. And then, and again, my mindset was, I'm going to do these 4 years. I'm going to get out and go to college. Now, the Navy promised me that I would have 3 hot meals in the bed, which is really what they gave me. They called it 3 hots in a cot, which was what they promised. And so I held them to that. I had the opportunity to, I started, basically bodybuilding in the military, and I put on 50 pounds.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that change you by the time you were 21 and ready to leave the Navy?
So, well, what happened was when I was in the Navy, I had the fortunate, the fortune to be stationed with some guys, some brothers that, were willing to help me get going in the right direction. You tell enough people what your plan is, and once they see you trying to do something, they're much more likely to help you. There's this quote that I say, that motion creates motion. So when people see you doing something or working towards something, they actually want to help you more because they see the effort. You see what I'm saying? And that's really what it was. I mean, When people ask you, people asked for your first year, why'd you get in? And I even told them, well, the Navy promised to pay for my college. When in actuality, the Navy promised me that I could try out for the Naval Academy. And I did.
Okay.
I did. Because, I played football and I wrestled and I ran track. So, and the Navy did. They actually sent someone to take a look at me. And it was the year I was turning 21. And the people from the Navy Academy acted like they had all these options to get someone from the fleet to get them to go to the academy. And the guy was like, well, we got it down between you and this other guy, da 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 da. And I'm just like, wait, I don't think y'all realize that, I was all conference, all everything in 3 separate sports. And I got to watch the Navy get drugged on TV.
Right.
I don't think y'all appreciate exactly who and what I am. And so I ended up declining the offer to go to the academy. And I got out of college. I got out the active duty literally a year later and went to college on my own. And that's when I met Jason.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So I guess turning into like this other part, because, one of the things I think is the most important is how we deal with like disappointments and those types of things, right?
Right.
Navy promises you all these things, and
right.
You're the type of guy that when you're all in, you're all in. Like it's,
right.
I mean, you say you're going to do something, you're absolutely going to do it.
Right.
You're faithful, just a naturally faithful guy. Like he's one of those you can count on. Drew.
Right.
I mean, he might not be early anymore. He don't really believe in that no more, though. That was the Navy. He stopped being early. But one thing for sure, you're gonna be there, right? But how did you deal with the disappointment of the Navy? And then like how did you deal with that? What was that whole transition piece like? Did you have bitterness? Did you have resentment? What were you like, oh well? How did you deal with it? And what do you think what tools did you pull from to be able to do that?
That's a great question. I think what it ended up becoming for me, I mean, yes, it was a setback, but I took it as motivation because now I got a point to prove, right? Mm. And it's kind of like and that's kind of like the way I'm set up. Disappointment can become motivation for success, depending on how you interpret that disappointment, how you process that disappointment, right? And so, I just told myself that, I'm gonna get out and go to college, and I'm gonna make something happen, which is exactly what I did. And so, and the Navy still paid for my education, just like they said they would.
Mm. So Drew, help me understand how you get from this place. I love that quote that disappointment can be motivation for success. How did you develop that mindset to create that reality?
Well, so that mindset came from my years as an athlete, right? Where you prepare for something and you prep and you prep and you prep, and then things just don't work out. I was although I ended up being a professional football player, my favorite sport in high school was wrestling. And wrestling is the one sport that is literally up to you. And the thing is, if something don't work out the way you want it to, you got to look inside yourself and say, well, where can I make the adjustments? I need to get better so I can be better. And the way that, translate to life is, every setback is, setting up the opportunity for a even bigger comeback. And then if you have the mindset that you just, no matter what, you just never going to quit, and you just never going to give up, kind of have like this relentless mindset that, no matter what happens, I'm going to make it work. No matter how hard I got to try, I'm going to make it. No matter how many times I got to do this, I'm going to make it work. And I think that mindset was, literally drilled into me from all my years wrestling in high school.
Nice.
Yeah. Because when you play a group sport, it's easy to blame somebody else. But you can't blame nobody else in wrestling. You know, my favorite coach from wrestling was Art Minsky, rest in peace. He used to say, hey, you're on an island with a monster. Then he would say, who's the monster? You or the other guy. Either way, you're on an island with a monster. That was it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that attitude like, is that an attitude anybody can have? Or do you where did that come from for you? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people that do that, but there's a lot that don't. What do you attribute that attitude towards, or that type of discipline? What do you attribute that to?
Coaching, and then the kind of friends that I had, right? So coaching, basically, I think the virtue of effective coaching is they take potential and they get it going in the right direction. But something has to be there. There has to be a lump of clay that they can mold into something. And then they just get that energy going in the right direction, right? I had the kind of coach that probably the most productive thing that ever happened to me, and I never really tell a lot of people this, was my sophomore year of high school, my wrestling coach kicked me off the team because he didn't think I was serious. Wow. My freshman year, I don't think I won any matches. I come back my sophomore year, I was late to a tournament because my dad made me late, and the coach kicked me off the team. And I was mad about it. And then my dad told me, I owe you an education. I don't care nothing about no sports. If you want to, play sports, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to do that on your own. My responsibility to you as your dad is to make sure you get an education. And then my whole mindset changed, because my dad then told me, if I'm serious, I would have ridden my bike to school if you were serious about it, even in the cold. And we're probably talking 15 miles in Chicago.
Right.
Right. And then after that, that pretty much changed my mindset. And then my dad bought me a weight set, and I just got serious. Came back my junior year, undefeated. Came back my senior year, I lost to the same guy twice. That was it. So, one setback really kind of put together the ingredients, because now I got something to prove. You see what I'm saying? And then that was kind of like my mindset was, I'm going to be given the opportunity to prove myself. And, although that existed in football, in wrestling, they really wring that out of you.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that, Drew. And I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you, and I knew part of your story before, but I'm learning more of it tonight.
Yeah.
Has it always been your life that when times got tough, you were able to look inside and figure stuff out? Or were there times where you needed somebody outside yourself? And I'm not talking about when you were in high school or in the Navy. I'm talking about after you got out of the Navy, maybe even after you finished playing football professionally. Yes. Were there times where you felt you needed a coach or a mentor or someone else, a person to hold you accountable? Or have you always been kind of blessed by this mindset that I can look at myself, I'll call it the former wrestler mindset. I can look at myself and diagnose myself and solve my own stuff?
Well, yes, but you can only get so far with your own mindset, right? A good mentor and a good coach will take you from this to this, right? They'll kind of help open your eyes to the bigger picture, because most mentors are a little further along in life than you. And they tend to be a little smarter than you and a little more wise than you, right? And so they're able to, kind of help you, reach the goals because they have the experience, right? Or they have the wisdom to help you figure out and determine what your next move is. And I think that's really the virtue of mentorship and coaching is essentially you can have all the determination and the the desire to do anything, but you need someone to kind of help you, get it going in the right direction. And I think that's the great thing about having a mentor and a coach, and that, external source of accountability and somebody to hold you accountable, because a lot of the times all of us might need that. That's why even professional athletes, even the most elite athletes you'll ever meet, they still have coaches. They still have mentors. And I think that's just the kind of like the human side of, who we are and what we do. We still need someone. If they're not going to hold us accountable, they can motivate us to dig deeper and reach higher and reach farther. And I think that's a good thing. And then also, with enough of those guys in your network, now, if you ever run into any kind of issue, you have, a resource to help you figure out how to deal with all the setbacks that life throw at you.
Yeah. So then let me follow with that, because I love that point. So when you see yourself, do you see as you look at your networks that
Yes.
you've got more people that you're mentoring, or more people that you're being mentored by, and why?
Well, for me, and where I'm at in life is I'm doing something to where I'm in a position now where I mentor more than those who mentor me. And that's only because young entrepreneurs show up every day. And once people figure out or they learn who you are and what you do, they want to, get some information out of you. And that's one thing that I told myself, that I will always be available. I will always be available for young entrepreneurs to be able to, reach out to me and find me if they need, mentorship or some kind of coaching, no matter what it is that they do, because the human side of everything, it basically starts with us, and, having the right mindset and having the right perspective and basically having the right approach to whatever it is that we're into. That doesn't change.
Amen.
So Mike asked, has that kind of always been your lot in life? Was there ever, just in terms of like growing up and your mentality and all that, one of the things I'm curious about is, have you ever been depressed before? And
Yeah.
if you don't mind sharing, what was that experience like for you? And then how did you get out of that? What was it that helped you out?
Well, I was depressed over, failed relationships, right? When my mom passed, when my dad passed, right? The painful realization that, certain things that you wanted to actually do just weren't going to work out for you, just because it just wasn't meant for you, you know? But how did I deal with that stuff? Quite honestly, having someone to talk to about it, someone to help you process those feelings, going to group, therapy classes and sessions and all that other stuff. Listening to other people, what other people have gone through, learning their stories, seeing what other people who've gone through worse, how they managed to deal with that. And then, and for me, that's always been kind of helped me make sense of what I'm dealing with. If I talk to someone who had to deal with an even greater loss and how they dealt with things. And that has been my kind of like my method on how to kind of handle depression. Like, I've had depression linked to injuries that I had, being stuck on crutches for 2 months. That's depressing, believe it or not. You got to deal with the intrusive thoughts that you might be a cripple and all this other stuff. And then you slowly but surely have faith in the physical therapy and you work your way back to where you need to be. And just all those things, trusting the healing process. And then when you come out on the other side, you just, can just say, man, I was really going through it on that, but I'm glad I made it through it. And then when someone else goes through something and you recognize it, you're able to kind of help them, kind of help process those feelings too. And I think, being able to give people a sense of hope when they're sad about things, and especially when it's out of their control. One of the things that, people that I would tell people is that, this will pass. You just got to get through it, and as simple as that sounds, it gives you something. That mindset has given me a sense of hope, especially, when I had to, do things like deal with the loss of my mom and my dad and all those other things. So that is how I've been able to handle depression and grief.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And let me follow up because, again, somebody that might know you from a distance, right, that doesn't know you nearly as well as somebody like Jason does,
Yes.
might see you as this successful businessman, good mental health, well built, works out, obviously concerned about his physical presence, kind of almost the stereotype of a Black man that's self-assured and is physically fit and can handle himself if he got into a scrap and all that stuff.
Sure.
But you just shared with us, hey, I was in group therapy. I was in group and we talked to people. So help our audience understand how you got there and how you knew it was time to get out of there because you got what you needed from that.
So the relationships that I were in my past, I've even had anger management classes, anger management courses, those sorts of things. Especially when I was.
Drew, I want to be specific,
okay,
so that people can understand when you anger management classes in my world happen one of two ways. People on their own decide, I realize for me, I have a problem with my anger and I want to address it, or someone else tells you, I think you've got a problem with your anger and you've got to go to anger management classes. So which was it for you and how did that help you if it did?
So someone else told me that I had problems with my anger, and they basically made it a condition for them to be a part of my life, that I had to go to these anger management classes. And so I essentially agreed to go to the classes. Now, being big and imposing certainly does have its, it comes with its, responsibility. And when you are bigger than everybody and you get upset and you become animated or whatever, people instantly get nervous because, oh, well, if this dude loses cool, we can't control him. We can't stop him, right? And so there's fear there. Well, if you don't learn how to process anger, how to process those impulsive emotions when you do find yourself getting upset, it's only a matter of time for, people closest to you look at you like a time bomb. Oh, dude, cool, but he crazy. We can't, he cool, but he ain't wrapped too tight. And then, but again, someone said, well, if you want me to be a part of the life, you really got to start going to anger management. And I said, okay, let's get us to class.
And so once you made that commitment, right? Someone encouraged you to go, bet I'll go. I'll do that because I think what you're asking me to jeopardize by not going is too valuable. I'm not going to jeopardize that yet. I'll go because I want to hang on to what I think this relationship is or can be.
Right.
What did you learn from that experience about yourself, about how you handled your emotions, and how you might be seen by others other than just this big imposing guy? Or was there something that you learned about the way you were processing your emotions or your word choice or the way you gestured that was making people concerned enough that they said, Drew, man, if you're going to be my dude, you got to go
Right.
and talk to somebody. What did you learn from that experience?
Well, what I learned was that, it's not so much as what you say, but how you say it.
Mm,
Right. And then like volume control. Right. And then have the discipline to know that once you say something terrible, you cannot take it back. Right. And then, it's kind of like, you fire a missile that don't have a target. Whatever it hits is going to destroy. Now, put all the people you care about in front of you and then fire a missile. It was kind of like, I have to be careful about what I say and how I say it to the people closest to me, because the moment you do that, you got to deal with the fallout that you created because you can't control your anger. Right? Think about what you're going to say before you say it. And then circle back to what I said earlier. How you respond to a situation is an indication of where you're at in life. Right? So it's like, hey, when you're young, you're afforded a little bit of grace in the impulsive department, but you can't be that way being middle aged.
right.
You got to know better. And if you don't know better, go get you some therapy, go seek help with a professional so you can be better. And, going to anger management taught me that.
Amen.
Right? Yep.
So you did it for, it was a relationship
Yes.
that you did it for. Um, um, have you ever done it on your, just like on your own? Like, man, I need to go get checked out. I think I'm like, and then what were some of the signs where you're like, you know what? I don't know, man, something's just not right. I need to do something. What was it, if that was ever the case for you?
So when I was real young, when I was like 21, I was still 20, and I was active duty in the Navy. It was recommended to me to go to anger management because the way I reacted to someone who had said some racially insensitive remarks. This is when I was in the Navy. And although I was justified in my response, what I did was terrible. So they said, well, as part of your disciplinary action, we're going to send you to anger management. And I said, okay. And that anger management lasted like, I won't even lie, it was probably like 12 weeks, which is a long time of having to go to class, go to those meetings. But, I did that because, my professional counterparts suggested I do that in order to learn how to essentially process impulsive feelings of anger and rage when I was younger. But long story short, somebody said something, racially insensitive, and I went off on them bad.
Right.
Yeah. And then, things got violent real fast. And then it was just like, and then on top of all that, I'm 230 pounds. He was like, hey, man, you too big to be doing that. We can't, you know what I'm saying? It took like 4 dudes to pull me off, dude. Like, come on, man. And so then, long story short, the slap on the wrist was, and it was more like, well, listen, we don't disagree, but you can't be out here doing that. We're going to send you to anger management class. And if you don't go, the consequences of that would be terrible. So then that was why I went. And I was 20. Yeah.
230 at 20 years old, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Give so what's an example of how you process now, like your anger? I mean, that's something that seems to have followed you. Doesn't mean it controls you or anything like that, but definitely. Sure. So what is something that, yeah, what when you get mad now, like what is the process that you go through to, like, so there's no, real consequence?
One thing I like to do is repeat back what they said to myself. And then I instantly asked myself is, what would make them think that it's okay for them to say that to me? And then I dwell on that for a little bit. And then, after that, I would essentially, try my best to de-escalate the situation and, try my best to uh, essentially part ways amicably. That actually happened to me. I was at a lumber yard here, and then the guy there, he didn't look like me, was saying some mean things toward the Latino guys, and I heard him, and I said, "Hey, man, that's inappropriate. Don't be saying that." So then he looked at me and gave me an earful, and apparently he had some contempt toward black folks. And that conversation was very, very one-sided on his part, yelling these obscenities at me. And I just told him, I said, "Hey, man, the manager of this store is black, and you probably gonna lose your account after today." And that's exactly what happened.
Right.
That's exactly what happened. Now, I could have responded all crazy, and I probably would have been justified in my response. And then he probably could have gone upside my head with something, because you don't just say nothing like that to a guy like me unless you got something for me. Like, life has taught me that too. Like, people just ain't crazy no more. Like, he probably had something for me. And now I'm just like, nah, man, you can't be out here calling me those kind of names no more. This ain't the 50s. He was an older guy. And sure enough, the dude came out, found out what was going on, saw the chaos ensue, said, "Drew, man, we appreciate you for being cool. We're going to ask this guy to leave, and we're going to shut down his account." He had a charge account, right?
Right.
And it probably cost that guy, I ain't going to even lie, $500,000 a year in revenue that he can't do because he can't charge nothing.
Right.
Now, if I'd have been, Mr. Hothead Impulsive, then, things could have escalated. I could have gotten myself in trouble. Although justified, I just didn't want to be a part of that. So I just said, "Hey, man, you're on your own with that. That stuff, whatever you say to me, don't bother me. You can't hurt my feelings with those words." And I told him, I was in the Navy. You can't say nothing to hurt my feelings. I'm sorry. You just can't. And so they ended up shutting that dude's account down too. And, that kind of made me smile. Good for, I'm glad that happened to him, because the manager of that lumber yard was also black like me.
Right.
It's like, "Wait, he out here doing what?" I said, "Yeah, you heard me." And everybody witnessed it. Was like, "Yeah, man, that dude right here tripping." Sure enough, they just went in there and shut it down. And I think, the how we respond to anything like that is just an indication of where I'm at in life. And that's me at 46. Now, me at 26 probably would have been throwing blows.
So let's talk about that, because I appreciate the candor of that, the realness of that.
Sure.
But I know we talked about, you mentor people that might be 26 or 23, right, 20, that might be just getting into what you've already been a part of, right? Trying to get
right.
businesses set up, whatever. So
right.
What advice for folks that haven't been able to connect with you directly, but are going to watch this podcast either live today or later in their leisure, what advice would you give to somebody in their 20s other than, "Hey, don't worry, if you wait 20 years to your 40s, it'll all calm down"? How can they get the next 20 years without going a rough road like you might have gone through at some point?
Well, I think the number one thing is our response to anything doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't. We live in an era now where the pen is truly mightier than the sword. It is. And so, you can, what happens to you, you can't control that, but you definitely control how you respond to it. And so we have to make sure that our response won't cost us, it won't come at the expense of all the progress we've made, both professionally and personally.
Amen.
Because we live in an era now where they'll just hit you in your pockets. They'll just hit you in your pockets. If you don't believe me, go get involved in some nonsense, and now you got to go retain a lawyer.
Right.
That ain't gonna be cheap, especially when you had the choice not to be there.
Right.
What do you do like so what I've heard so far, I mean, your upbringing was strict, was all
Yep,
these things, right? Brought, that carries a whole mess of other things that happens. Not mess in a bad way, but a whole bunch of other things. You're in the Navy, you realize that somewhere in there you realize that you're a hothead of sorts
yep,
and you're big and you can actually do the things that your mind tells you that you want to do and you lack
yep,
the discipline, right? But
yep.
and then as you're older now and you're realizing through some trials and some other things that you've been through, now when these things happen, because I think what's true is that when I'm offended, like something happens to me, like I like to look at it like there's an energy that's created, right? There's something that's created when I'm offended. I get that feeling I like to consider it like anger. I mean, like that anger or that hurt or that, because anger is a secondary emotion is what they say. So there's really something else in here that does something. And you need to, this is a question for you. When that stuff happens to you, before you used to react with that energy and you turn it on somebody else, now you don't react the same, but it still bothers you. What do you do with the energy that's created? What do you do with that stuff inside of you that's still there? If it is still there, how do you dispose of that in your life so that you don't hold on to bitterness and resentment? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's a good one. Honestly, I think for me, the weight room has certainly been uh, eh, just an out for me to just be an outlet of aggression for sure. The weight room and just basically competitive sports. I won't even say combat sports anymore, but just being able to just really get in the gym and really exert myself physically. That has been a great outlet for me. Because when I was younger, I did carry a lot of tension. I did. And that truly became motivation to be in the gym. Yeah. And then obviously, when you're young, you go to the gym every day and you try to lift the gym off its foundation every day, you start to look like that.
Right.
Yeah. I was the biggest dude everywhere I went since I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I prided myself on also being the coolest too.
Amen.
Okay, nobody out there said that I bullied them. I used to look out for the homies. I really did. And I made sure nobody got steamrolled.
Amen.
Yeah.
I know we've been at it for a minute, and these hours always seem to go by much quicker than I ever appreciate. So I've appreciated the conversation. I wanted to go back to something for a second because
Okay.
you were talking about your dad, right? And
Yeah.
the type of person he was that raised you. Share with the audience a little bit about what it was like for you when he finally passed and you knew you didn't have him anymore.
Well, that's an interesting mindset because my dad was the kind of person that, do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. He was that kind of person.
Right.
But it was kind of like, when my dad passed away, it was almost like because my dad, all he basically became to me is like I wasn't very close emotionally to my parents, and the Navy helped with that because I was gone.
Right.
Right, so I was physically apart from them, and so slowly but surely over the years, over the 20 years as an adult, because my dad passed when I was about 40, 41, somewhere in there. So uh, the way I looked at it was, he even told me that his responsibility was to raise men. That's it, right? And so it was kind of like, once I became an adult, I was on my own. And he used to tell me, whatever you do, don't mess up home. No matter where you go in the world, don't ever mess up home. Don't ever mess up your ability to go back home if, everything fell apart in your life. You can always come home.
Right.
And so that was the kind of dad I had, right? With his high school education and his, kind of 12th grade logic, perspective, kind of ethos. And that was really, as simple as it seems, that was just one thing that I carried with me in my life, as an adult. And not that I ever needed to return to base, if you will, but that was something that always stuck with me. But my dad was easily the most strict, most authoritative person you ever met. And he demanded that we read the Bible, right? So, and I had to learn instruments. You know what I'm saying? I had to learn how to play the piano, all the Negro spirituals. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't have a lot of options in our household, man. That was the way it was.
So but given, it's obvious, and I know the relationship you have with your dad. I know your dad, trust me.
Yeah.
Well, but I think just in terms of like a final thought, I guess, or like just a final question, is go back to that. What was it like for you when he died? Like, how did you process that as a man, the finality of your father is no longer here? Have you fully dealt with it? And if so, how?
Well, obviously I was sad about it because that was my dad, right? But I was at peace with it because, my dad told me when I was, I don't know, I must have been about 30, 32. We had obviously some disagreements and, when we butt heads and all that. But he told me one day that he was, just super proud of me. And no matter where I go in life, he was just like, just know that you made your parents proud. Because I was really like, I had this mindset that I wanted to, really do something that my folks could be proud of. And then my dad would basically, his approval, I learned later in life that was the one thing that I sought from both my parents, but because I wanted my dad to know that, he raised a son that ended up, doing great things, and that he had a hand in that. And it was kind of like, it was closure for me when my pops passed, because it was in a sense like, well, you know what? The man who raised me was proud of the man I became.
Right.
My life is complete. Right. And it's kind of like, it's just hard to explain because, my dad was the kind of dad that kind of like, he would let you fall and hurt yourself and then correct your mistakes. He wouldn't prevent you from falling. He would let you fall. And then he'd help you get up. He would tell me to dust myself off. And here's what you did wrong. Now try it again. Right? Like my dad was that kind of dad. Like he wasn't super involved and all overbearing and super protective. Nope. He would let me do something dangerous. And if I got hurt, he'd tell me where I made my mistakes at. And then, all right, try it again. And then that was really it. And that was kind of like how it was in a nutshell growing up under his roof. And then, fun fact, my dad talked my mom into letting me play football. And my mom was not a big fan of me playing. So she told my dad that if he gets hurt, I'm going to make him quit. I'm going to take him off the team. So my dad pulled me to the side and said, listen, before you walk through that door, you better straighten up. Because if your mama see that you hurt, she going to make you quit. And I was like, all right. So there would be some days and I played for the Harvey Colts in Illinois. There were some days both my legs would be broken and both my arms and my back. And I would have to tighten it up, walk in that front door. And, you know, I come from the black folks that say, when you enter any room, you speak. So I would come in, hey, Mom, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. You not hurt, is you? No, ma'am. She would be like, go get cleaned up for dinner. I would go downstairs and have a funeral on I just lay on my bed and have a funeral because I couldn't move. Everything was hurt. My mom never knew. I came home outside myself, hurt. My mom never knew. My youngest brother, Simon, he's 5 years younger than me. I would lay on the bed like, please. I just want. He would come in and he would hit something. I'd be like, please don't touch me. I'm dead. I'm dead on this bed. And he'd be like, you hurt? No, sir. And my pops used to tell me, hey, man, don't be limping. Your mom going, don't act hurt at all. So I learned how to mask my pain from my dad. 9 years old. You couldn't tell me I was injured. Nope. I don't care if I'm bleeding profusely. I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious where you got that where some of that grit comes from. And it sounds like for you, aside from all the trouble, trials, all the, potentially or from an outside perspective, negative things that happen from having, a strict father, what could be negative implications seem like you were able to harness those and turn them into something good. I guess the thing I would like to ask finally for you to do, and this, I don't know, it just came to me right now.
Yeah.
If you were to talk to a man out there that has some kids or has a child or is going to have a child, a potential father, what piece of advice would you give a brother that's about to have a kid or has one now and is just wondering what they should leave their son?
I mean, a couple of things that I would say is hopefully that the woman that you're having a child with, hopefully that's your wife, right? Let's get some structure in your life, man. Right? That's the one thing the one thing we can do that will set us ahead economically, at least, is to be married to the mother of our kids. Let's start there, and then be willing to learn, because there are lives at stake that directly affected by your decision making.
Amen.
Right. So I think and not to get all TD Jakes on nobody, but I really think it just begins with marriage, right? Let's get married. Let's have some structure in your house, right? Make sure you and your wife, ideally is on the same page. Y'all want to, have this vision for y'all's household, and y'all want to do this for your children and all this other stuff. Let's have all that. Let's just get rid of all the chaos if we can, and just try your best to at least set yourself up for success by getting married, having a wife that wants what you want, and then the compatibility is there, and then you just focus on providing for your family, because that's essentially what you agree to do the moment you make a baby. For success and setting someone up for success is something Jason taught me.
Right? Yeah. We lost you there for a second, I think.
Yeah.
You hear me?
No, you didn't.
I said, no, setting someone up for success. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, no. How about
you? Good?
Yeah?
Kind of.
Yep. Okay, I'm sorry. No, I was just saying, getting set up for success is something Jason taught me a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's
But
up.
I would tell that to any brother. I would tell that to any brother. And then another thing too, and I would tell any young brother that's trying to, get into business and get into enterprise, don't be afraid to network.
Amen.
Don't be afraid to network, right? Because, you don't got to be successful alone, right? You're doing it on your own don't mean you did it alone, right? You can join forces with other people that see your vision and they just want to be an asset to you or a resource to you to help you along your route. Because I think, networking is something that more of us need to focus on, that we need to do, because a good network will our education 6 days a week starts on Monday.
Mm.
My friends with Jason taught me that.
That's what's up. That's what's up, man. Your phone is acting up at a perfect time.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's a perfect time.
How about now?
Yeah, you're. That's okay. Don't worry about it. We're gonna let while you get situated, Mike. Why don't you share just kind of some final thoughts from you, and then we'll push pause on this thing.
Yeah, and I so appreciate Drew being a part of this conversation. So much of what he's talked about is the things that we want to encourage people to do, to be part of some type of community, right? So what you heard Drew talk about is the importance of having mentors, having coaches, having other people that hold you accountable. And that's really so important, not just for success, but really what Drew was talking about initially, to keep your mental health together, right? To make sure that you feel supported, encouraged, motivated going forward. So I thank Drew so much for taking time out of his day. I apologize that his connection got a little hinky at the end, but I think most of the people had a chance to really get the message that he was sharing with us tonight. So I appreciate, for myself personally, get to know him a little bit better through this platform, because I know we're going to be part of a network now where stuff's going to happen that I'm going to be able to go to him or direct people to him, and he's going to be able to reach to me and direct people to me. And that's how we have these networks grow. And so I think that's just so vital. So I appreciate that. Jason, I'll turn it back to you, and then I'll let you pray us out.
I'm just grateful always. That what I love about mental health and people, these are just a real talk space. This isn't something that's prescribed. It's not written out. It's we just show up and let's just regular conversations. You know what I mean? Very grateful for Drew. Grateful for the friendship that we've had over the last 25 years. Grateful for you. Grateful for this time. Grateful for the vision that you had for this podcast, for this platform. We're seeing right now that this is so much bigger than things are happening with this that I didn't know how it was going to happen. I knew something amazing was going to happen, just not sure how. But so thank you for your vision. Thanks for your steadfastness. And we'll just close out, as we always say, one of the things that I always like to tell people is I am a Christian. So when I pray, that's the way that I pray. And just as an act of faithfulness to what we've, because of what we've been given, it's important for us to make these public acknowledgments. And so that's what I want to do. I just want to acknowledge God and just as a means of thanks. So for those of you who are watching that agree with my belief system, feel free to join in. Those that don't, it's all right. We're glad that you came in. Shout out to Antonio, Sarah, Chaz, Dante, Tom Lemon, Sylveta, Rising Butterfly. Thank you to everyone else that logged in that didn't share a comment. We really appreciate you spending any amount of time. Those of you that are going to come later on and watch this either on YouTube or on Spotify, We're grateful for your time, and hopefully we've added some value to your life. God, I just want to say thank you. Just grateful. Thanks for everything that you do, big and small. Help us to continue to walk in faith. We don't know what the end of this journey is. We're just beginning, but we're grateful for where we are right now. You've done exceedingly abundantly above all we could ever ask or think already. We didn't even know that we would get some of the benefit that we did. So I just pray that you bless Mike and Steph. Pray that you would bless Drew. Thank you for his time tonight. Thank you for his life, for what he represents, the way he's affecting people in his world based on his experience. To anybody that heard this is going to be a father, let's pray that you give them the mentors and to be able to equip them with the tools that they're going to need to get where they need to be as men. It's difficult out here. Anybody that's hurting, that doesn't have an answer, maybe today's topic didn't speak to them. I just pray that you give them people in their lives they could speak to their particular situation. All the interactions that we've had as a result of this podcast, we're very grateful for it. Everybody that's watched, that's been touched, just pray that you would continue to bless them. So we thank you so much for everything you're doing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, y'all.
With that, let me just give final comments. I'll turn it to close this out completely, Jason. It's just this. If you know somebody who's going through something that you think they need to reach out to someone, they can reach out directly to Jason or I. We can either be the person that they can talk to. As we said all along, we're not therapists. We don't pretend to be therapists. We're not going to give therapeutic help. But sometimes that's not exactly what someone needs. Sometimes someone just needs a place to sit and talk and have a voice to listen to them and be seen. And each of us, we've decided to be that if we need to. But we also have a network of counselors and therapists that support the work that we're doing. That network continues to grow in ways. That's part of what Jason's referring to, where this is growing in places, in spaces that we never imagined we might get invited into. And so if you've got somebody, you can reach out to us. And if they need additional resources, we can put them in touch with folks that share our heart, share our passion, and share our desire to really help and heal people that are struggling right now. And that's so many people around us. So again, don't take it for granted that the person that you're sitting next to or across from or down the hall from, or the person that drives you to or from work or that you see every day is doing great just because they haven't screamed at the top of their lungs that they're in pain. But take a moment to sit and listen to people and see if they're hurting and see if you can help in some small way. If each of us do that, then we'll each play a role in making this a slightly better place. And I'm all for that. So for Mike, I appreciate everybody that's logged on to listen to that. We'll have this uploaded shortly to Spotify and YouTube. Jason, I'll turn it back over to you, my brother.
With that said, we appreciate y'all. Much love to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. On Brothers, y'all good. Peace.
We out.